Good Tuesday afternoon. Welcome to this edition of NCSA Live. I am Danny Koenig, Director of Regional Recruiting with NCSA, joined today by Phil Wells. Phil, what's going on, man?
Oh, man, it's been a while, Danny. Extremely excited to be here. Now that we're in June, lots of good things to go over.
It's crazy, man. They lifted the ban with the NCAA in the dead period, and things are going crazy with recruiting just as anticipated. So, this summer is going to be huge for college coaches and for athletes to get back on track, leave the past in the past. We're moving forward, right? So it's summer. Everybody's got some energy. We just hit the longest day of the year. So this is a very opportune time for our athletes to learn a little bit more about this process, get back on track with some of the stuff we're talking about. And today's topic is that summer recruiting checklist. So we'll go through this outline here quickly, things that you can do this summer for the college recruiting process. We put out a seasonal checklist every quarter. So we'll discuss kind of what you're going to see in this checklist. But by graduation year, we want to talk a little bit about where you should be going into this summer to best set yourself up for the following year. Make sure that you're on track based on how college coaches are recruiting. I do want to acknowledge that we will be taking questions at the end of this. So, please drop your questions here in the comment box. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We're going to get to some of these questions in the back half of the segment here. So one other thing that I want to acknowledge, and we'll put it here on the screen, we'll drop this in the chat box. You can access this summer checklist on our website, kind of see what you need to be doing. So if we gloss over something that's relevant to your grad class or you miss something, you can always come back to this link here at the bottom that we will also post and check out where you should be with the summer checklist. So Phil, let's dive into this. This is huge. We're kind of at this turning point with recruiting. We want to make sure that everybody stays on track with what they're supposed to be doing. So let's start with this. We put this out every quarter, Phil. Summer checklist. What are NCSA's seasonal recruiting checklists?
Absolutely. I think it's first off really best to note that, hey, the recruiting process, it can get a little bit overwhelming. At times it can be a little bit stressful. And the question that oftentimes is brought up from families as well as student athletes are, hey, with such a stressful process at times, how do we stay on top of it? How do we navigate it? How do we know what we need to be doing based on a given time period as it pertains to the recruiting timeline? And that is where the recruiting college checklist comes into play, really just letting you know based on that certain time period, whether it be summer, whether it be middle of the recruiting process, end of the recruiting process. It's really just there to let you know certain things that you need to be doing in that certain time period. And it couldn't be a more pivotal time period to talk about this right now with us being in June, coming off of a pandemic where we didn't have a lot of the recruiting aspects just last year. And college coaches are on a frenzy right now looking to recruit and evaluate all grade levels. So within that, I think it's best to start off with the freshmen, Danny, just a little bit on the aspect of, what our freshmen can be doing right now as we really enter the duration of June.
Yeah, and I think this is an important note to make, that when we talk about freshmen, we're talking about 2025s, right? Because most of your seniors in high school, your 2021 grads have committed, coaches are moving on. So at this point at the end of the school year, we consider freshmen or rising freshmen the 2025 class. So when I say freshmen and you haven't set foot in high school yet, don't panic, right? This talk really is for you. So rising freshmen, what should you be doing right now? First and foremost, commit to your sport, right? Before you kind of start the recruiting process, you need to think about if you're ready to make that commitment and compete at the college level. So you got to research and basically intake information for differences between high school and college sports. Make sure that you're ready to balance the athletics with the academics, those sorts of things. It's really kind of that gut check, like, hey, is this something that I really want to pursue? So when you're going into your freshman year, you're starting to think about this, you're going to catch athletes that are really ready to rock. And they've been thinking about this for a long time. And you catch other athletes that are kind of just getting started, not sure what they want to do. It doesn't really matter what anyone else wants to do. This is about you and your process. So as a rising freshman, you need to start thinking, hey, is this serious? Is this something that I want to pursue? How serious am I about this over the course of the next 4 years to really make a push to get to the college level? Once you get that answer, yes, I want to compete in college, it's go time. And Phil, that's something we talk a lot about, that this process, you can really hurt yourself by waiting too long. Our best suggestion is that you have an athlete that's expressed some interest in pursuing college. They're pretty serious about it. You got to start taking some steps forward.
Absolutely. As soon as the commitment is there, we got to grab the bull by the horns and take off with it. And amongst the recruiting process, it's about building a foundation before you embark on a journey. Okay, and the foundation in the recruiting process, it starts with your commitment as a freshman. Just like a lot of other things, you build a house without a foundation, you're going to run into some trouble at some point. So we want to make sure that foundation is there amongst commitment as a freshman. And we got to grab the bull by the horns. And once we know it, and as we move into sophomore year, now it's time to actually embark on a journey. Okay, if we're a sophomore and we're, again, ending the school year, we're into June, you know, we're looking at the summer months. Now, depending on sport, this may be the time where you're most busy. And others, this may be a little bit of free time. We have to take advantage as a sophomore. We have to take full advantage of all of our free time, because this is the time to keep in mind that college coaches, even in the summer months, they're still evaluating. And in some cases, depending on sport, they're evaluating at their heaviest. And we obviously want to factor in that during this time last year, there was not a whole lot of recruiting. So right now, as a sophomore, we got to be focused on spending a couple hours a week. You know, we still want to enjoy our free time, you know, getting out of school after a long year. But, you know, we want to spend a couple hours a week at the very minimum on managing our recruiting process. And we're taking things up a notch, you know, as a sophomore versus a freshman. As a sophomore, we're managing things. And a great start in that direction is actually creating your online recruiting profile through NCSA's network, where college coaches can start evaluating you directly, so they can actually identify you as a prospect, so you can embark on this overall recruiting journey with some confidence.
Yeah, so again, our summer checklist, we're going to put that at the bottom. We'll put that in the comments. You guys just saw it on. There it is again. This is summer checklist for June, July, and August, and we're going to separate that out by your graduation year. You know, when we talk about freshmen, those are rising freshman athletes that have just finished their 8th grade year. When we talk about sophomores, those are athletes that have just finished their freshman year. They're going into their sophomore year. So we're trying to look forward in this respect. Phil nailed it on the head. Sophomore year, you got to start doing something. If this is a goal for you and you know that you want to pursue college athletics, you need to actually take action in your sophomore year. And Phil kind of suggested, you know, get started with that profile. That's a very easy way to get your information in front of college coaches. You can start a free online recruiting profile with NCSA, get your video up, get your transcripts up, let those coaches know what you want. And once you get that to 50%, it becomes searchable for every single college coach in the country at every level. Right? That's a very passive way about going about the recruiting process, but it's a starting place. Now, if you talk that sophomore year, so again, our rising sophomores, the kids that have just finished their freshman year, they can start with that profile, but they need to start thinking about their preferences. So this isn't just about throwing your name in the ring and praying that the right coach comes and finds you. You know what you want to go to school for. You know where you want to be geographically. You need to have the conversation with your coach about what's possible, and then you need to start identifying and evaluating the schools that are going to be a good fit for you, and then eventually taking that next step to let those coaches know of your interest, because otherwise there's no way that they're going to know that you are out here, you exist, and you're interested. So, you know, when we talk about this process, it is very proactive. And NCSA has those tools on the back end for you to be able to find those schools and open up lines of communication with coaches, which is something you absolutely need to be doing as a sophomore in advance of the contact period where our rising juniors are right now. So a year from now, you want to have positioned yourself with the right college coaches to let them know of your interest, so that when they're able to reach out to you, you're one of the first calls that they're making, saying, hey, here's our visit dates. We're very interested. We want to know more about you, those sorts of things. That's a really good goal for our sophomores at this point. Now, Phil, our rising juniors, right? All these guys are going to be in the contact period very soon. The majority of them are already in the contact period where college coaches are reaching out to their top prospects. Junior year is where it all happens, right? Junior year is not when recruiting starts. If you are behind the times of the junior, you got a lot of catching up to do. So what should our juniors be thinking about at this point in the recruiting process?
Danny, I think you prefaced it right on the nail. It is go time if you're a rising junior, technically a junior now, 2023 prospect. Okay, if you step foot into classes come up this fall and you're a junior, right now is go time. First off, as we enter June or the rest of June and the rest of summer, we have to take into account there are absolutely just an explosion of college camps right now. Okay, just an explosion because we didn't have a whole lot last year. So do your due diligence, do some research, figure out what's going to be best for you, whether it's near or far, figure out whether it's an exposure camp, maybe a developmental camp, but find a couple camp opportunities to get out to. We haven't had this in the last year, so find some opportunities for you to get out to a camp, be face-to-face with some college coaches, let them see you in person, and even give yourself the opportunity to see where you stack up against, other athletes similar to you in the same grad class, playing the same sport, looking to achieve the same goal. This is that time period now with that explosion of camps this summer to figure out something that you can go to where it can be very effective for you as a student athlete and very beneficial. Now, in the same aspect of this being very important in terms of juniors, that 2023 prospect class, this being a very big year, we got to be on top of our game. Okay, we have to be knowledgeable on the NCAA recruiting guidelines. We have to be knowledgeable on the Division II and Division I calendars as it pertains to certain sports. We have to be knowledgeable at this time. Because Danny, as you prefaced, we just passed June 15th, where most college coaches for most student athletes can now go ahead and reach out to you directly and be proactive. And again, guess what? June 15th, that wasn't a time period where college coaches were just pulling names out of hats. They were actually following up with student athletes who've been proactive for the last couple of years. Okay, and there's another aspect to that as well when it comes to September 1st, for the rest of college coaches to be able to reach out and evaluate. Danny, this is a time where, again, if we're a junior, if we're in that 2023 prospect class, it's all hands on deck.
Yeah, I mean, you're a sophomore, right? A rising junior. You're part of that junior class now, and it's open season for the very vast majority of coaches. I had a conversation with a parent just the other day, and his son is a high-level tennis player, and he's going to be a junior next year, and he's ready to start to see interest from Division I coaches. So first and foremost, I applauded Dad for getting started early, that they had been on the radar for these coaches, and they've taken some pretty intentional steps to make sure that their information is in front of the right coaches. And to their credit, they started hearing from Division I coaches on the day that they were able to be reached out to. But Dad had contacted me despite hearing from Division I coaches when they were supposed to, basically said, we don't know what we should be doing next. When should I email a coach? Should I be pestering them? Do we follow up? Do I need to be proactive? And this is basically what I told him. I said, your goal now that you're in the contact period first is to get on the phone with that coach. For me as a recruiting coordinator, a couple different Division I programs, like that was my goal initially. When I'm trying to get an athlete interested in what I'm doing, I'm trying to get them on the phone, because in two ways, going in both directions, that is a level of commitment to that school, right? I'm not talking about verbal commitments. I'm just saying that coach is trying to reach out to a lot of kids, and they're just trying to figure out who's interested. So for you, if you're that kid that's been reaching out to coaches, you're starting to hear back from college coaches now that you're a rising junior in the contact period, your goal should be to get on the phone with that coach, because not only does that show your interest in that program and saying, hey, I have questions here, when can we talk? But if that coach is willing to make that commitment to you after, a 12-hour workday, and they've been coaching all day and they've been on campus, to take some time out of their evening to pick up the phone and schedule some time with you is a commitment from that coach to a level saying, hey, we are interested and I am going to spend some time with you. So for that dad, for that family that's taken steps forward and starting to hear from coaches, yes, your next step now that you're a junior is to get on the phone with coaches at your top schools of interest. The next step beyond that, visit campus. Right, through those conversations, through over the phone and getting to know more about that school and that program, you're inevitably going to cross some schools off. You're not visiting all the schools that are on your target list, but you want to get to a place where you've had these conversations with coaches and they are inviting you to their campus, whether that's for a fall, junior visit day. Some schools have an official junior visit day. Some have just things scheduled over spring break, just likely times where they're going to get athletes to campus and be able to kind of showcase the school and showcase the athletic department. Whatever those dates are for that school, your goal, if you're having good conversations with those coaches, and you know those coaches are interested, you're trying to get on campus. Because invariably, any campus you go to, no matter what you think they are on the internet, they always present in a certain way. And that may or may not jive with a certain student athlete, right? So visiting that campus is really going to be your time to meet the coach, meet the team, get to know the athletic department, maybe take a tour campus, meet with somebody in the academic side of things, hopefully somebody in your major. And that's going to be a really telling way for you to make a good decision if you want to end up at that school, and kind of go through the process talking to that coach about earning a roster spot. So for our juniors right now, it really is go time. You do need to be on the phone with coaches at your top schools of interest, learning more about that program, learning more about that coach and their team and their philosophy, with the basically in the back of your mind, you're trying to figure out, is this a school that I want to visit in person? And that's going to be a big benchmark for most of our student athletes out there that are going into their junior year, and something they absolutely have to be thinking about. Now, Phil, let's talk about our seniors, right? I don't want to discredit this. You got rising seniors who, in theory, should have been in this process doing those things for the last year. We know the last year has been a little bit strange. So what's your best suggestion for those rising seniors, your 2022 grads that need to keep on track with the recruiting process?
Absolutely. Now, first off, I do want to note, Danny, that if you are a 2023 or a 2022 prospect, and again, you've leveraged this process, you stayed the course, and you're close to that commitment, continue nurturing the conversation, continue nurturing the relationship with coaches if you're at that stage. Now, if you're in that stage of, hey, you still got to keep pushing, maybe you've been waitlisted by a couple programs, maybe you haven't had any scholarship offers come through just yet, maybe you're not hearing from any coaches at all. What I like to do is call this our commitment check. Okay, we want to call this our commitment check. That same commitment that we got started with as a freshman when we built our foundation. Senior year, 2022, you don't know what next step to take. You don't have the opportunities in line that you want. Reflect a little bit upon that same commitment that led you to start the recruiting process, and use it as a driving force to open your options now as a senior. Okay, because if it was Division I before, guess what? Now we need to look at Division I or Division II, maybe Division III. We need to expand a little bit. And we have a myriad of ways where we can do so. The most popular are typically about three options, whether it be developing and getting a little bit better academically and athletically, maybe at a junior college. Certainly a viable option. Another option is to maybe just explore other ways of financial aid if you didn't get the scholarship offers you like. Tons of opportunities when it comes to financial aid out there to still make a good school a good fit. And we even look at an aspect that's a little bit overlooked, but the walk-on opportunities at Division I programs. 46% of overall athletes at Division I programs are walk-ons. Okay, so all is not lost, even if you're shooting for Division I and you didn't get that scholarship offer you were expecting. As a senior, we have to do that commitment check with ourselves, look in the mirror a little bit, and very much decide, hey, is my commitment greater than my initial college choice? Okay, and if it is, let's just open up our options a little bit and be more willing to explore more than what we initially would have, because now things are going to be a little bit more limited. Not lost, but just limited.
Yeah, I think a gut check is the way to say it. And there is still time on the clock, but time is running out, and it's running out quick. So it's about keeping your options open and continue to push for this. But our seniors, we've seen the seniors late in the game find a ton of success using the tools and resources that NCSA has to offer. So just keep that in mind, right? It's not all doom and gloom, but you are going to have to put the pedal to the metal here in a little bit. So I do want to get to some questions here, but brief summary. Again, we've been putting this link in. You can come to NCSA's site. You can check out the summer checklist for June, July, and August. Figure out where you need to be by grad class. And then, of course, if you guys have those independent questions and things you're trying to figure out, reach out to us at NCSA. Someone's always willing to pick up the phone and help you guys better understand this based on your goals and where you are in the recruiting cycle currently. So let's get to some questions here. I'm interested to see what we have because the contact period is open and COVID is done and behind us. So this one here from Nate. How important is it to go to camps as a freshman in high school to get noticed by coaches? Phil, you were in a sport that relied heavily on camps, clinics, showcases, etc. What are your thoughts on a freshman going to a camp, and what are some of the things they should be looking out for in that regard?
Yeah, so as a freshman, just as we talked about how big the commitment aspect is, when it comes to the camp scene for freshmen, I know we have the exceptions out there, but typically for a freshman, the camps are going to be more towards developmental aspects. And yes, it's great to actually be seen by a college coach, but you want to more so leverage the exposure aspects and being evaluated by a college coach for sophomore year and up. As a freshman, it's about making sure you're committed to your craft, committed to the sport, really wanting to do it in college. Once we get past that point, let's get to some camps to continue to develop. Okay, let's continue to make sure we can heighten our craft overall. That way, as a sophomore, when it is time for more of those exposure camps, we can really be at our best.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was at a football university camp in Phoenix about a month ago, and there are some very talented underclassmen and middle schoolers involved with that. I think the biggest difference that I saw at that football event in particular between the underclassmen and the upperclassmen is that the upperclassmen were familiar and they were comfortable and they were ready to get after it. Now, the value there for the underclassmen and your middle schoolers, it's having that experience being uncomfortable. Because we talk about this a lot in sports, you need to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And the more reps you put in being uncomfortable, you're going to be very familiar with that situation and be able to take advantage of that when coaches really are paying attention to your class and you are at that camp. So if you're a 7th, 8th grader, a freshman just starting to look at camps, just understand that that process by being there is really, really valuable. I think the before and after that camp is going to be really valuable as well. Just saying, hey, coach, thanks for being there. Really liked it. Let's plan to be in touch when the time is right. And that way, when you get to sophomore year, junior year, and you are at those camps and you're really trying to do something impressive for these coaches, you don't have any worries about what everybody else is doing because you've already seen it. So that, to me, is kind of the value for a camp as a freshman. Just like you said, it's developmental, but it's also putting yourself in that environment to be comfortable with that down the line and really make that impactful. But that's a really good question, Nate. I appreciate that. All right, let's get to some other questions here. This one from Dilly. Is there a specific hotspot in the day to call coaches with their busy schedules? So for me, it was kind of middle of the day. I would typically have practice in the morning. I'd be doing recruiting work throughout the day, practice in the afternoon, administrative work, this and such. So typically middle of the day was always going to work for me, but also in the evening. I will add a caveat to that. Do not call coach out of the blue. Coach is busy. Coach works 14 hours a day. Coach works 7 days a week. And he's trying to tend to a team. And coaching college kids can be tough too. So, if you want coach's attention, send him a quick email. Say, hey, coach, really interested in the program. I want to schedule a time to talk. Offer up some times that work for you. Right? Those conversations are maybe going to be 15 to 20 minutes. Sometimes they go like a half hour to an hour, but at least an initial call, 15, 20 minutes, few questions back and forth to get to know each other. But that should be scheduled because you want to make sure you're getting all of coach's attention at that time. So sweet spots, middle of the day, evening, but always communicate your availability ahead of time and then consider coach's schedule as well to make sure that you guys can connect. That's a great question. Okay, what if your senior is a complete introvert, scared of making phone calls, but coaches aren't responding to DMs? So, Phil, we got a lot to unpack here. We got what I would assume is a rising senior of 2022 that's struggling to communicate a little bit. How can we help this athlete communicate interest to coaches?
Yeah, first of all, we got to go back to the notion of just getting ourselves out of our comfort zone. Okay, as a rising senior at this point, it is going to be extremely pivotal just to support your son or daughter in regards to reaching out to coaches. And it's okay if you do it together as a family initially. Okay, you want to support your athlete to the highest capability. And when it comes to reaching out to these coaches, especially those that haven't maybe answered a DM, maybe because they're not on that necessary social platform, okay, give the utmost support. And you have to get out of that comfort zone when it comes to actually reaching out to those coaches. Now, definitely utilize the NCSA online network when it comes to college coaches looking at your position, looking at your grad class, because oftentimes what we run into as a senior is reaching out to a coach who's no longer having roster spots available, who is no longer looking in that recruiting area, who's no longer recruiting that sport or that specific grad class. There's a lot of factors that come into play. So if we're looking at a rising senior who may be a little bit hesitant to reaching out to a coach, more confidence can very much come into play when utilizing the NCSA network and doing some research ahead of time when it comes to the best aspects of reaching out to the coach with the highest connection rates?
I will say as a college coach that I dealt with a lot of introverted student athletes, and I had recruited a lot of introverted student athletes. And I understand that not every athlete out there, and please don't take it this way, because there are a lot of different types of athletes out there that can find a lot of success. But I think the ones that are the most visible are kind of the loud ones, the alpha ones, right? The extroverts. But I'm here to say that some of my most introverted kids were some of my most favorite, because they were easy to work with, and they kind of thought things through and took it all in, and really had a good perspective. So just by being an introvert doesn't mean that coaches don't want you, but you have to figure out those channels to be able to open up a dialogue. And I think if you're an introvert, a good way to start that is just fill out a questionnaire and send that coach an email, right? See if you can generate some kind of interest or a dialogue with that coach just over the internet, where you have some time to type it out and think it through, and you don't necessarily have to answer questions. Eventually, you are going to need to be on the phone with that coach. You are going to need to visit that school and meet with that coach in person. So I think a good way to get around that is to basically be as prepared as possible, do your research on the school, and then just have a couple of pre-canned questions that are obviously relevant to that school and their program. But it makes it easier to have that conversation as the introverted student athlete when you're talking to a coach, to say, hey, look, I got a few things that I want to ask you that I'm wondering about. You've got those ready to go. Makes that go a little bit smoother. I think the other thing that I'll say as a coach that had to, reach out to these introverted kids and have a conversation, that I also had somewhat of a talk track and things that I wanted to, learn from these kids. So part of my goal was to not only gain their trust, get them to open up a little bit, but I am also trying to learn what they're about, and I have some questions for them too. So it's, if you're a student athlete that's out there a little bit worried about the conversations you're going to have with coaches, understand that they've dealt with this quite a bit, and they kind of know how to navigate that to engage you. They really do just want to learn about you, and don't have any fears that if you're an introverted kid and not a lot to say, you kind of just take it all in. That's great. Right? Coaches still want that kind of athlete, but you do have to overcome that hurdle to a degree, and put yourself in a position so that coach knows that you're interested and have those conversations. Let's get to another question here. This one here from Chrissy. If a coach always responds to you, would you say that the player is a serious prospect? I mean, short answer, yes. Phil, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you want to continue nurturing that relationship, absolutely. But again, take that as a huge, really good sign, because not all coaches respond. Okay, we just talked about, coaches who may not be looking at your certain grad class or your certain area, or even coaches just really having a super busy schedule. But that coach is taking time out of their day and responding always and rapidly and making it timely. You have to take that into account as you being a serious prospect. But don't take it for everything. Continue nurturing that relationship. Continue impressing that coach. Continue keeping that coach up to date, because just like that coach is being prompt and getting back to you, you want to make sure that relationship continue to grow versus diminish. Because if it's already really great, timely responses, you don't want to do anything to counter that. Okay, so that's a really good sign in the right direction. Continue to nourish that to make it even a better sign.
So let's just assume that coach responds to every single recruit every single time. That's just who they are. I would hope that most coaches out there are doing that. Let's flip the perspective here. You're the coach. You respond to everybody. You spend a lot of time reaching out to your prospects, and 90% of them are not timely with the response, or they don't get back to you. That can be deflating and defeating, and it can make you not want to reach out ever or respond to any recruit. But good recruiters keep pushing forward. So if you take that from the perspective of a college recruiter, and they're spending a lot of time just to get athletes to answer, or do it in a timely manner, you guys, by being proactive, by engaging that coach and reaching out, that coach appreciates that. You are someone that coach knows and wants to work with because you are communicating. So it's not necessarily what goes into that communication so much as the subtext of that there is communication going on, and that it is happening in a timely way, and that you guys are starting to build a relationship. So do not underestimate what coaches see on their end in just trying to get athletes to respond. It can be a struggle at times. The fact that you guys continue to engage in this coach and they're responding is an outstanding measure of that coach's interest in you guys as a prospect. So just keep doing what you're doing. Hopefully it works out for you guys. Last question here, Phil. Let's get to one more, and then we'll do our ring the bell for our commitments. This one from Lisa Patterson. How can I get more coaches to view my profile? I always make them very personal and do my research, and find that even when coaches do open my emails, they don't view my profile after. Phil, this is a kind of a nuanced one. What are your thoughts here for engaging coaches through the profile through NCSA's network?
Yeah, so first off, this is something that's, not super common to the aspect of personalization, but we want to continue the outreach. We want to continue being personable. We want to continue engaging that college coach, and we want to be creative to do it. Okay, we have to take into account the busy schedules. We have to take into account the off season or currently in season. We have to take into account all aspects. We have to get creative to the point where maybe pairing that profile with a phone call towards that college coach can help out. Making sure your profile is attached to every single email you send out. Making sure that profile is attached to all social media platforms. We just want to amp the ante a little bit when it comes to making sure we can increase our volume towards views on our profile. And it's a challenge. It's an absolute challenge when we don't necessarily know if the coach is interested in us. We don't know if the coach is just busy. It's absolutely a challenge. But that does not mean we should look the other direction. If anything, if we can continue our engagement, if we can continue being proactive and show that coach that we are very persistent, when that coach does get back to you, when that coach does view that profile, the engagement is going to be extremely high, although it's maybe a little bit delayed initially.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, up front, that coaches have a lot going on, especially right now. The floodgates have opened for recruiting. Summer is a time where their athletes are away. So every single college coach at every level for every single sport uses the summer to do their recruiting, right? And that's a very, very busy time, and they're probably getting hundreds of emails a week. So it's not necessarily that the coach isn't interested. Maybe they just forgot. So first suggestion, give it about a week, maybe 2 weeks, re-engage that coach. Hey, coach, really hope that you had a chance to check out my recruiting profile. I'm really excited about your school for these reasons, right? Don't just make it generic, speak to that school in general. But then my biggest suggestion for you right now, ask the coach for something, right? you're trying to engage this coach, and it can be something as simple as, we talked about the phone call earlier. You want the opportunity to speak to that coach because naturally you have questions about their program in the school, things that you're not going to find out on the internet. So ask the coach for a time to speak, or ask the coach, hey, I took a look at your roster. What typically makes your team? Or what are you looking for in a potential scholarship candidate? Again, just engage that coach with genuine, honest questions about their process just to try and get them respond. And then don't be offended if they don't respond within the first 6 hours or even the first week. You just got to stay at it. And after a couple attempts trying to engage that coach, asking them questions, maybe trying to get on the phone with them, if they're still not responding, throw that school on the back burner. I wouldn't totally cross it off just yet, but do focus your attention on the coaches and the schools that are getting back to you, so you can continue to build relationships that way. And then maybe you can use those schools that you're having good conversations with as leverage against some of these other schools that are maybe blowing you off to say, look, I've got interest, I'm still interested, but where are we at with things? So appreciate the questions. Really appreciate the opportunity to kind of work with you guys and get a pulse on what's going on out there and how everybody's feeling about it. But do want to take this opportunity to ring the bell. I want to acknowledge the student athletes that have gone through this process, battled adversity, used our network to their advantage, and ended up committing. So Phil, you want to kick us off with this one?
You got his favorite part of the show. We got Charles Mell here going over to Virginia Military Institute. And again, as you guys can see, looking at Charles, heck of an athlete. Obviously, he's holding up his number one because he's knowing that he's just committed. He's doing a really good job, and he's battled through some real adversity coming out of this last year, especially as it pertains to track and field and a lot of the challenges that came along with it when it came to the pandemic. So huge congratulations.
Yeah, we just got Charles' photo back there. But VMI, obviously a great school too. So we know that Charles was doing very well in the classroom, and he's going to be at a D1 institution, which is cool. So next up, we got another track athlete. She excels in the hurdles. This is Chloe Moyer. She's going to Cornell University. She's going to Ithaca, a beautiful city in upstate New York. Obviously, Cornell is an extraordinary academic institution, so she'll be challenged academically as well as on the track. But one thing that I want to call out for Chloe in particular, first and foremost, her recruiting profile looked amazing. She clearly spent some time on it. And I think the subtext there for coaches is you really care about your craft and you really want me to know that you care. So congratulations on putting together a good profile. But what was behind that, the actions that Chloe actually took to end up at Cornell was impressive. So Chloe started out with a target list of 52 schools. Cornell was one of those schools, but it was a lot of very high academic Division I schools. 52 favorites to begin with, but she was also showing up in, I think it was more than 1,100 independent searches by college coaches trying to identify and evaluate prospects like Chloe. So through our network, she can see which coaches are searching for her, where she's going to be of value. Beyond that, she got 134 programs to actually look at that profile. That's almost 3 times what was on her target list. And then beyond that, of those 134 programs, she had 121 programs following her profile, meaning that every time she put up new grades, new transcript, new video, new times, those coaches knew about it immediately. So this isn't just about Chloe putting together a nice profile and having 1,100 plus college coaches find her. She really put in the effort to say, look, this is what I want. I'm going to go out and get it, let these coaches know. And as a result, she was offered a roster spot at an extraordinarily high academic Division I program in New York. So just wanted to call that out about Chloe, who did a very nice job.
Awesome coming off Chloe. Really impressive hurdler picture. I can never do that myself. I may have fell on my foot.
I would tear something if I tried. I'm gonna leave that to the experts.
We got to leave that to Chloe. But we got Ethan here as well. Ethan Shaw. Really good action photo from Ethan. Obviously being a baseball player, going to Gardner-Webb, top program there for Ethan. A really good student, a good athlete overall for Ethan, and he's another candidate who's battled through a lot of that adversity, being in baseball, which again, as we know, some sports being impacted a little bit more than others. Baseball being one where seasons were totally canceled. And Ethan being proactive in his recruiting process, starting things out early, reflecting on his commitment when needed, still landed a huge opportunity over at Gardner-Webb University. Big time program, and certainly excited for Ethan to continue to do great things on and off of the field.
Yeah, so congratulations to those 3, obviously battling the last year at a time when it was really crucial for them to engage in that. So if anybody out here, underclassmen, even 7th and 8th graders, you don't know what's going to happen. And again, like we said earlier, best suggestion, get started with this process early. You really can't start it too early. And these 3 in particular have gone through adversity and found success. So appreciate you guys being here. Next week, we are going to be talking about in detail what college coaches look for in recruits. So again, we're going to be spilling some industry secrets on that front to help you guys better communicate your interest to coaches and really get in their good graces so you're going to be recruited by your top schools of interest. Phil, always a pleasure, man. I always love hanging out with you. You bring such good insight to what we do here.
Absolutely, Danny. I don't know, man. I'm just still excited about the rest of the summer, man. Just going over some of these things. Again, recruiting being back on, I'm still excited. So I certainly hope that the folks are engaged, the folks are excited. Student athletes are excited about the summer, and obviously come next week, a lot more industry secrets to dive into and keep the folks abreast of the recruiting process.
Cool. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks everybody else for being here, and hopefully we'll see you guys tuned in here next week. Talk soon.